grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. It's time for the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast.
Fantasy freaks and geeks, what is up? Welcome to the Week 12 preview episode of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. It's a mouthful. And we are here with my buddy Kev Burke, who I grew up with. We've been trying for a couple weeks to get you on the podcast, and now that I'm sitting here back in Jersey recording in my parents' living room, we're able to get together and talk some fantasy football. So welcome to the podcast.
Dude, I can't tell you how pumped I am to finally make an appearance on this, because you've been talking about this for years and you finally did it, so I'm excited. For those of you out there that obviously don't know me, which is all of you, I've been playing fantasy for about close to 10 years at this point. Currently in 4 leagues. One of them is an all IDP league, which I recommend to everybody. Matt actually started that up about, 5 years ago now?
Yeah, we're on the 5th year right now.
5 years, yeah. So for those of you that are interested, I suggest it. It's different.
I've gotten quite a few people interested over the past couple of years, and I think we tried getting a second one started this past season.
Almost had it,
and we're definitely going to be able to next season. So yeah, at the end of the season, I'm going to make sure that I give everybody a way to get in touch with me, so I can start a whole franchise of IDP leagues. It would be pretty awesome.
At this point, we should have started a dynasty, or what is it? We should have just started an entire keepers league or something like that, because we've been doing this for so long. Oh my God, yeah. But anyways, it's a pleasure, man. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to hear too, man. This is gonna be fun. So, as we usually do, we start with the cheers to you, pour one out section, which is pretty much our winners and losers section from the week before. Kind of gives us a little chance to summarize the past week before we start knocking down the door for the week 12 that we're in right now. And luckily this week it works out because we have 3 games on Thanksgiving, the best holiday of all. We get beer, food, and football. What the hell else could you ask for?
Not much, right?
And then there's another 4 or 5 games that are NFC home games. So we'll do those in part 1, and then all of the AFC home games will be in part 2. So for all of you out there looking to only get tidbits here and there, if you can't listen to the whole episode, it's all good. So we're going to start the Cheers to You section here with Mike Evans, who has been on the Pour One Out side of this segment for the past 2 weeks. And this past week he had over 100 yards and a touchdown. He even fell on a fumble, which gave him a second touchdown. So as a guy who has Mike Evans in 2 leagues, that was pretty awesome to see for me. So definitely cheers to you, Mr. Mike Evans. Kev, I know you have Philip Lindsay in one of your leagues, and he had a pretty awesome game last week.
I've been playing him all year, and he's been pretty consistent, but this was by far probably the best week. 79 rushing yards, 4 receptions, 27 yards, and a touchdoan. And he's just, for a little guy.
He actually had 2 touchdowns. He had 1 rushing and receiving.
2 touchdowns. Okay, I missed that. Yeah. But, this guy's just been in beast mode all year. And for a guy that's, what is he, 195 pounds?
Yeah, he's a small dude.
He's killing it this year. And, I'm glad to have him on my team.
He's a small dude, but he doesn't run like it. He runs like freaking Jerome Bettis, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
The next guy on the Cheers to You is Kenny Golladay. Last week, 14 targets without Marvin Jones in the lineup, had over 100 yards and a touchdown. If this Marvin Jones, I think it's a knee sprain that he had, if he's going to continue to miss games, Kenny Golladay is going to continue to be a wide receiver 1. I think next year we're going to be looking at him in that wide receiver 1 tier after what he does for the rest of the season here. I think he's a beast, man.
Yeah.
The next guy here is Jordan Reed. So last week he had his first touchdown since week 1.
Give him a round of applause, or what?
Yeah, so we're cheering into him. Hopefully Colt McCoy doesn't kill Jordan Reed's playability here with Alex Smith going out for the year with those broken bones in his leg. Which we were talking about last night, how disgusting it is.
And the coincidence of it, that it was Joe Theismann, 33 years to the day, and the ending score was the same exact score that it was in the game that Joe Theismann had that same exact injury. was weird.
Yeah, that is kind of freaky. The fantasy gods were not nice to Alex Smith on Sunday. There was a couple young rookie wide receivers that did really well this past weekend. I know there was one in Carolina that you were pretty happy seeing have a good game. DJ Moore with a pretty awesome game last week. So
all preseason, I heard about this kid. I was listening to all the podcasts, whether it's fantasy football podcasts or just regular NFL podcasts, hearing all good things about this kid. Saw his highlight reel. And, beginning of the year, super disappointing. So I dropped him. And then, these past couple of weeks, he started coming into his own. This week, you're talking 7 receptions, 157 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, he's starting to come into his own, and he's starting to look like that number one wide receiver that Carolina's been needing. Forget about Funchess.
Since Steve Smith left to go to Baltimore, they've been looking for somebody.
Who else have they had? And then they had Kelvin Benjamin, but then,
overrated.
Oh, way overrated.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore had the same targets as Devin Funchess last week, and yet he had 4 times the yardage plus a touchdown. Funchess, I think, dropped 3 or 4 passes. I think this was the game to tell the Carolina coordinators and their head coach,
let's get this kid involved.
Yeah, I'm the better receiver here for the rest of the season, so I need to be the number one. The other young dude who did really well was Traquan Smith, who's he's got kind of a streak going playing in New Orleans. He's another dude who had 157 yards, caught 10 of his 13 targets for a touchdown. It almost looked like at points in that game that the Chiefs were, or the Saints were just kind of, it was just kind of practice for them. Like they were just kind of
That's
out
been
there.
the last 3 games,
dude. And it's like it's like, okay, let's see how much we can win by without really using Alvin Kamara all that much, and with targeting, Traquan Smith instead of Michael Thomas 13 times. I think it was they actively went out there and said we need to get this dude more involved for the rest of the season and for our playoff hopes. And
it's
they did exactly
stupid
that.
what the point differential is in the past 3 games for them.
Yeah,
because I think they've held their opponent to 10 points in each of the last 3 games, I think.
It was 3 games ago with the Bengals, which I know they blew them out.
Yeah, that was 40, or was that 45-10? And I think last week was 50-something to 10, I think. I don't remember right off the top of my head. And then this past week was 48, I think 48-10, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Dude, stupid. That's stupid.
Yeah. The one guy who has played actually pretty damn well against the Saints is Mr. Stephon Diggs, if we all remember that the miracle in Minnesota last year. But he's on the cheers to you section. 18 targets. Can't really get any better than that from a wide receiver.
You can't really get any better than that. He finally had his coming out party, in my opinion, this year. I mean, it's really been all the talk about Adam Thielen, which, don't get me wrong, I got him on one of my teams. I don't have Stephon on any of my teams, but he finally, it seems like him and Kirk Cousins are starting to click. But, I'm happy for him. I'm happy for the owners that had him because, he was long overdue.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, over the past few weeks, Diggs has been out targeting Thielen. And I think it's in response to that string of whatever it was, 8 or 9 straight games where Thielen had over 100 receiving yards.
Yeah.
I think defenses have been starting to say, okay, we really do need to focus on taking away, at least trying to take away this dude first, but you can't stop both of them. And,
well, you can't. You take away one, they have another.
Exactly.
I mean? So it's not going to work. But
the last guy on the cheers to you section here is this dude named Gus Edwards.
Who are you?
Gus Edwards, he came in and he just absolutely stole the job from Alex Collins. He bitch slapped him and just stole the job.
Dude,
17
he robbed him
carries.
at gunpoint, bro.
Dude, Alex Collins had 17 rush yards last week to Gus Edwards. I think he had over 100, whatever it was. But he just stole this job. He's clearly the number one back there, I think, now. I think it's just been every week it seems like there's been an old jab taken at Alex Collins, and this feels like the final knockout blow after the Buck Allen fullback dives and then
every time they got in the red zone or on the goal line. And for everybody that doesn't know, Gus Edwards is an undrafted rookie free agent out of Rutgers University who didn't really have that impressive of a career in Rutgers, comes in and he steals Alex Collins' job pretty much. Let's just be realistic here. He stole his job. Yeah,
It's sad. I have Alex Collins in a couple leagues. I've high on him coming into the season here, and just I think it's over. I think he's solidified his spot on my bench for the next week at least to see what his usage is, and if he's only going to get a handful of carries, I'm going to have to drop him because it's not going to be enough for him. It's really disappointing.
I'm surprised you haven't dropped him already.
The next guy, he kind of killed both of us. I know you have him as well as I do. Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
So we're absolutely going to pour one out for this guy.
Yeah, big time.
I mean, he goes from he was having solid games, and then he comes out and he had what was it? One reception,
one catch for 8 yards.
For 8 yards, dude.
Yep.
And I'm sitting here telling people are asking me like, "Yo, who's a sleeper that I can use?" And I'm like, "Dude, Marquez Valdez-Scantling." I'm like, "Go and pick him up. He's going to be on the waiver wire, I guarantee it." And what does he do? He makes me look stupid.
Yep.
So I'm pouring out a jug of vodka for you, bud.
The next guy who killed both of us is Zach Ertz. That combo of Ertz and Wentz last week, where it was pretty tough. Ertz only had 3 targets for 15 yards. The Saints really stopped him. They were like double and triple teaming him. It was pretty tough. And on the other side, Wentz had 3 interceptions and just looked absolutely horrible. So we're pouring one out for that Eagles combo of Zach Ertz and Carson Wentz.
Absolutely.
Another tight end that was extremely disappointing was Eric Ebron. Apparently, he was used as a decoy more than anything. I mean, the only time he touched the ball was on the second to worst play call of the week when the Colts tried to run their version of the Philly special with Ebron throwing it to Luck.
And he throws the ball. And then this is coming off of a week where he had a rushing touchdown and 2 receiving touchdowns. Mm-hmm. And then to come out and throw up a big fat egg. Like, come on, man. Maybe it was game script, but at the same time, I mean, you can't tell me at no point in that game when you're putting up, what was it, a 40 burger on Tennessee? You can't tell me at no point in that game was he open to at least get 1 catch. I mean, a 0, a big fat egg. I mean, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, and then the next guy I'm pouring one out, he's the last guy on the list here, is Christian McCaffrey. He had a great matchup against the Lions' run D, and he didn't perform anywhere near as well as I was hoping he would. But we got some interesting stuff here about the Lions' run defense, actually, as we jump here into the first of the 3 Thursday Thanksgiving games, Bears playing at the Lions. So after week 6, the Lions went out and traded for Snacks Harrison, who we both know and remember as a New York Jet, a run stopper, a defensive tackle that just clogs up the middle and makes it hell for running backs. So the Lions went out and traded for him, and in week 7 you had Miami come in, and between Gore and Drake they put up less than 100 yards. But then in week 8, the combination of Chris Carson and Mike Davis, they put up over 130 rush yards. And then in week 9, the combo of Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray put up over 100 yards on him too. So it wasn't really working out until week 10 when Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen came in. And on 18 carries, the 2 of them combined put up 36 rush yards. So and then, like I said, last week against McCaffrey, they only allowed 53 rush yards. So it seems like Snacks Harrison is starting to make a difference for this run defense here. And like I said, week 10, Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen put up a total of 36 yards. So I'm looking at these running backs for the Bears. Although the Lions right now are still in the top 10 for most fantasy points allowed to running backs, I think I'm going to have to sit Jordan Howard, and if I have to play either of them, I'm going to have to play Tariq Cohen, just because of how he's involved in the pass game and how little Jordan Howard is involved in the pass game. Last week he only had that 1 target for 2 yards. So I think over the next couple of weeks we're going to see the Lions. They won't be in the top 10 for most fantasy points allowed to running backs anymore. I think it's finally turned around here with Snacks Harrison coming over for that run defense.
Now that they got the game plan. But, just get off subject a little bit real quick. A team like that with a rookie coach, how do you go out, you get Snacks Harrison, and then you trade arguably your best wide receiver, and still try and tell your team that you're in it to win it. I don't get that. But anyways,
I mean,
moving on.
You look at Kenny Galladay.
He's a beast. He's a beast. But I mean, you're talking about a vet like Golden Tate, and you're gonna be like, oh, trade deadline. All right, yeah, Philly, you want him? All right, yeah.
Well, it is a contract year for him, so maybe he didn't want to bring him back. Maybe he's not the type of receiver that he wants to build his offense around. I don't know, but I forget what they got for him. I think a 3rd round pick.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Whatever it was, you just got to hope as a Lions fan that draft pick turns into something. Because Golden Tate's a good wide receiver. You wouldn't know it by looking at his stats with the Eagles, but he's a good wide receiver. So getting back to these Lions wide receiver, obviously Kenny Galladay you're starting, like I said, with those 14 targets. If he's the number one wide receiver, the bona fide number one wide receiver for this Lions offense, you're going to play him. As bad as Matthew Stafford has been, he can still get the ball downfield. So you're playing Kenny Galladay. And then because I have a feeling that the Lions are going to be down early, especially if Kerryon Johnson isn't able to play, it came out today that it's not an ACL or an MCL tear. It's just a knee sprain. So we'll have to see if he's going to be available for this game. I'm assuming he's not.
I'm guessing they're going to be cautious with him because, why risk it? I mean, let's be honest. They say that you're in the race right now for a wild card spot. Let's be realistic here. I mean, you're probably looking at the top 2 teams are going to be the Bears and the Vikings, and it's going to be a fight between the Vikings and the Packers. But I mean, the way the Packers are playing this year, I mean, just sit them. Don't play him in fantasy. And Lions, you probably should just sit him and let him rest.
You want to talk about the future of that offense? It's Kerryon Johnson. So I don't know why they would risk him. I mean, I'm sure he's going to want to play on a Thanksgiving Day, his first Thanksgiving Day game. But you're on the Lions, bud. You'll get a game. You'll get to play on Thanksgiving every year. So don't worry.
Every year.
And with that being said, if Kerryon sits, do you have any interest in playing LeGarrette Blount against this Bears run defense that gives up the 3rd fewest points?
Absolutely not. I don't even know if I'd have any interest in playing Kerryon Johnson.
I mean, the way
that Hicks has been playing, you want to talk about a guy stuffing up the middle like Snacks Harrison. Aaron Hicks has been playing out of his mind. If you try and run up the middle, forget it, dude. That guy's coming up and he's going to he literally has grabbed guys with one hand and just thrown them down. And then you got Mac on the other side. Come on, it's going to be a long day. Yeah. A long day for Lions.
Looking at the Bears wide receivers, to me, Anthony Miller, he plays like I'm not going to compare him to DeAndre Hopkins, but he plays with the same intensity as Hopkins plays with, I feel like, which obviously is saying a lot because DeAndre Hopkins looks like an absolute monster when he plays football. But I really like him. I'm definitely starting him. And Taylor Gabriel, another guy, he had 9 targets last week for the Bears. Led the team in targets. So anybody that's going to lead their team in targets, I'm going to play him. So
it's the thing with that though, I feel like that's game script when it comes to Miller or Gabriel, because if you see last game, Gabriel got a ton of more targets in that game, and then the game prior to that, Anthony Miller went off.
Yeah, and then trying to predict what's going to happen with Trey Burton is a whole nother issue.
No, forget it, dude.
Yeah.
If you have another tight end, then start him over Trey Burton for sure.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next Thanksgiving Day game. We got the Redskins playing the Cowboys. Alex Smith broke his leg, so it's going to be Colt McCoy starting. The Redskins coming off of that loss to the Texans, and the Cowboys coming off that big win against the Falcons. So how do you see this game shaking up?
So the way I see things shaking out is, first of all, you're going to start Zeke. You're going to start Zeke, and if the Cowboys are smart, they're going to get him the ball 20-plus times a game. I mean, unfortunately, that's what this game script has to be for them in order for them to win games, but you have to. You got to get Zeke the ball. I mean, he's ridiculously good. And
he's by far and away the best player on that team.
Oh, so. Hands down. Now, you do have Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper in Oakland was a joke. He comes over to the Cowboys. He has a couple good games. Last game, what were his stats? It was he had
3 of 5 targets for 36 yards. Not a very good game.
So, I mean, pretty upsetting. Now, this is a guy that can. I mean, he can go one-on-one coverage, and he's gonna either run right past the guy or he's gonna run a nice route. He's gonna get open. So he's a guy that you can start. Honestly, after that, I mean, who else do you really have on the Cowboys?
I'd say you could go with that tight end, Swam, but he apparently just broke his wrist, I think it is. So he's going to be missing some time, obviously.
So on the offensive side, I mean, honestly, on the offensive side of the ball there, it's really between Zeke and Cooper.
Yep.
You're not starting Dak unless you have, say you have
Mahomes on bye.
Mahomes or Goff on bye.
Yeah.
Then you're going to start. Then you could start Dak if he's on waivers. You have him sitting on your bench. You can start him. Now, with that being said, honestly, I don't have anybody else on that side of the ball for the Cowboys that I would start.
Right.
Going to the other side of the ball, Matt and I were talking about this before we went on the podcast here, and he was saying that with Alex Smith out now, all the wide receivers on the Skins they're looking like they're not going to be doing anything. But let's not forget, Colt McCoy has been in this system for about 4 years. He has played under Jay Gruden before. I mean, he knows his system. He knows all the guys on this team. Now, am I saying start any of the Redskins? No. I mean, maybe you're going to start Jamison Crowder. Maybe you'll start Jordan Reed if you have Jordan Reed. You're going to start Adrian Peterson. I mean, but even that is like, I mean, I don't even know if I'd want to start him as a running back. I mean, maybe as a flex because the issue is that offensive line is depleted. It's absolutely depleted. So, I mean, you're risking starting any of the guys on the Redskins. But with that being said, don't sleep on Colt McCoy. Don't sleep on him because I'm telling you right now, he could have a huge game. Now, you are going against one of the best defenses in the league, but still, I mean, Jamison Crowder, Jordan Reed, and Adrian Peterson would be my starts on that. But I mean, I'm really and truly kind of staying away from anybody on that team, to be quite frank.
Yeah, apparently Jamison Crowder is still not looking like he's ready to come back. The one player that you didn't mention that I would be interested in playing in if he's active is Chris Thompson. I saw an alert on my phone earlier that that he didn't practice, but that the coach had said that he has some optimism that Thompson will be able to suit up and play. And when you look at the Cowboys' defense, they're giving up the 9th fewest fantasy points to running backs, but at the same time, they give up the 5th most receptions to running backs. So maybe if Chris Thompson is active, maybe the Redskins try and focus on him as far as moving the ball through the air. And in a PPR league, maybe you can get away with playing him in your flex. With there's only 2 teams on bye, but I feel like there's more fantasy relevant players on bye this week than there was
2 teams.
There was for the 6 teams that were on bye last week.
Because you look at this game and you're sitting here and you're maybe talking about a handful of guys that you could start like on a weekly basis, and then you look at last week's game and you got like Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, Pat Mahomes. You have you got Robert Woods, Jared Goff. I mean, it's ridiculous.
The list
Reynolds
is pretty
now,
long. Yeah,
it's stupid. This game is kind of like,
All right, let's move on to the Thanksgiving nighttime game, an NFC South matchup. The Falcons going to New Orleans to play the Saints. We got the Falcons coming off that loss to the Cowboys, as we just mentioned, and the Saints coming off of an embarrassing loss loss for the Eagles, but a win against the Eagles for the Saints. They, like I was saying, it almost looked like they were just at practice, just like messing around because it was everyone
and against the second team defense.
There was just touchdowns everywhere. I mean, the Eagles defense, it's looked bad all season, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. They missed. They had another 2 of their. Why am I talking about the Eagles? It's the Falcons. Sorry. So for the Falcons, you're obviously going to play Matt Ryan, and Julio Jones are obvious plays there, but the one guy that I'm definitely staying away from is Austin Hooper. We just saw what the Saints did to Zach Ertz last week, absolutely shut him down. So I'm not playing Hooper if you pay me to, because I don't think he's going to do a thing. The 2 other wide receivers for the Falcons, some interesting stats here from the last time that they played the Saints in, I think it was week 3. Ridley caught 7 of 8 targets for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Mohamed Sanu caught 4 of his 7 targets for 36 yards and a touchdown. So both of these guys scored last time they played. Calvin Ridley had a huge game last time they played.
What week was this in, though?
This is week 3.
My whole problem with that is the Saints defense has done a complete 180 from then, though. Mm-hmm. And Calvin Ridley has also done a complete 180 from then. What
true.
has he done? You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion, I'm staying away from every single wide receiver except for Julio Jones in that game.
Okay.
On the Falcons side of the ball.
Right.
Calvin Ridley scares me. He had the one big game. I'm staying away from him. I have Mohamed Sanu. I started him in a flex this past week and the week before that, and he has done nothing for me. I'm staying, and I think he's also had a hip issue.
Yep.
So, I mean, he's one. I mean, both those guys, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I am staying far, far, far away from those guys.
See, I see this as being another shootout here, and just because of that, like I feel like Calvin Ridley's got to do something. So I'm willing to play him as a flex. If I don't have him in any of my leagues, but if I did, I'd be willing to play him in a flex just because of how high scoring this game is going to have to be for the Falcons if they want any chance to win. And then looking at those two running backs, last time they played the Saints, it was the first game after Freeman went down and Coleman got 15 carries, and he had 2.2 yards per carry in those 15 carries. So that's another thing that the Saints do really well is their run defense. They give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks and wide receivers, but they give up the fourth fewest fantasy points to running backs and tight ends. So
and didn't they get back? What was his name? It was not Deion Jones. Who they just got back another guy on their defense.
Who, the Falcons?
Yeah, they got Grady Jarrett, which was big
Jones,
for them.
it
was Deion Jones.
Yep.
So they got he's their middle linebacker or outside linebacker?
I think he's more of like a safety linebacker hybrid.
Okay,
so I
okay.
guess an outside linebacker.
Because I mean, they were missing him too. I mean, besides Keanu Neal too. You know, I mean, that's another guy they're missing. But to get him back is a pretty big boost for that defense. But you're going against the number one offense in the league. I mean, you know.
Yeah, looking at the Saints receivers, obviously Michael Thomas is a play, and as I mentioned earlier, this dude Traquan Smith, I think you can start feeling confident about playing him. It is in New Orleans again, so if you go back and look at his stats at home, it's pretty ridiculous. He's like the Big Ben of wide receivers. When he plays at home, he's unbelievable, and then on the road, he's not very good.
Check your waiver wires, people, because I did last night, and he was still available last night. Go out and see if he's available. If you need a wide receiver and you're hurting, go check your waiver wires right now.
Yeah. And then obviously Kamara and Ingram are both big-time plays. If you have either of them, you're playing them every week, and you should be rewarded this week, especially in PPR leagues. The Falcons give up the second most receptions to running backs, so I can see them both really hurting the Falcons in the run game as well as in the pass game here. So
what a 1-2 punch that is, huh?
Right, unbelievable. Okay, so then the next game we have here is the Packers and the Vikings. Kev, what are you liking in this game? What are you not liking in this game?
All right, so like we were talking about before in Cheers to You, pour one out. So we have DJ Moore. DJ Moore, if he's available, which I actually just checked before we started this podcast in my one league, which is a Yahoo league, he was available. Put a waiver wire claim in for him. Go grab him. I mean, he at this point is going to be the number one wide receiver on that team.
You're talking DJ Moore?
DJ Moore, yeah.
Okay.
Is that what I said? Did I say something else?
Yeah, we're talking Packers Vikings.
Oh,
here.
I'm on the wrong game. My fault. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
You got too many notes over there, Kev.
Okay, so in this game, you're starting both wide receivers for the Minnesota Vikings.
Of course.
I mean, I've had Adam Thielen from the beginning. The first 8 games, he killed it for me. He's not been doing terrible, but it seems like more of the targets are going towards Stephon Diggs. And like I said, he had a little bit of a coming out party this past week. Although he was getting the targets, he didn't really have the fantasy relevance that we really wanted to see. You're going to start him. That backfield, the Minnesota backfield is. I mean, personally, I'm going to stay away from it. Dalvin Cook just has been, whether he was hurt or he's hurt, he's not getting any points, or he just seems a little too inconsistent for me. Even though he had that one big run a while back where he ran like the fastest in the league, I think it was like 22 miles an hour, something like that. And then Latavius Murray, he plays when Dalvin Cook is hurt, but other than that, I learned the hard way this past week. Started him in a league, and I'm like, he'll get some points. Yeah, I think he got me like 0.5, so That was fantastic. Now, on the other side of the ball, I know I said earlier, pour one out for MVS. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, in this game, I truly believe he's going to have a bit of a bounce-back game. You have on Green Bay, you have Devontae Adams, and Devontae Adams is going to be getting shadowed by Xavier Rhodes the entire game. Now, with that being said, that really doesn't mean anything when you have Aaron Rodgers throwing you the ball because, I mean, he could throw you a back shoulder fade where only you're going to be able to get it. And Devontae Adams is probably still going to have the production that he typically has, but I just see MVS coming in and still having a pretty productive game. So, in my opinion, I'd start him in a flex, or if you have one of the guys on the Rams or on the Chiefs on bye, I personally would start him because he's been pretty consistent. He had that last week where he really kind of hurt my heart, but I think he comes back this week and he has a pretty decent game. And obviously, you're going to be starting. Adams. I think Green Bay. I think even though he's on his way out, Mike. What's the head coach's name? I'm drawing a blank. Mike McCarthy. Uh-huh. I think he finally realizes that he's got to stick with just a number one running back, and that's Adams 100%. This guy
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones. Oh, I'm thinking of Philly. Well, I don't know what.
Take a breath, bro. I know it's nerve wracking coming on the fantasy football podcast here.
I know, sitting in your mom's dining room, man. It's definitely nerve wracking. Anyways, no, but yeah, Aaron Jones, guys. I apologize. You know who I'm talking about, but Aaron Jones has definitely solidified himself as the number one running back in Green Bay, and obviously you're starting Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that goes without saying. Anything else in that game? I'm staying away from both tight ends. Kyle Rudolph, to me, is a touchdown or bust, and same thing with Jimmy Graham. And also, I think Jimmy Graham's out with a broken thumb.
I think they said he's going to try and play through it, so that means he's going to play like 2 or 3 snaps, and then he's going to walk off the field, like shaking his head, being like,
just like Sammy Watkins did to me last night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying with MVS, and I do. I do expect Aaron Rodgers to come out here and try and really throw the ball down the throat of the Vikings after what happened to him last year against the Vikings. But he kind of already got his revenge in the first game of the season. But I can't trust a dude who only caught one of his only 3 targets. I'm scared to death of him. And in the league that I own him, my decision at flex is either Valdes-Scantling or Marlon Mack. And since Marlon Mack is playing Miami, I'm going with
Marlon Mack 100%. I mean,
so I have to sit Valdes-Scantling. And if he goes off sitting on my bench and I miss out on it, then shame on me. But I can't trust him.
He's definitely the number 2 wide receiver. I mean, he's taken over Geronimo Allison, and I mean, in my opinion, Cobb.
And Randall Cobb, too.
I mean, MVS has definitely solidified himself as a number 2. Now, I get what you're saying, but, I mean, if you don't have Marlon Mack and you don't have that option, I would recommend playing MVS because I do believe he's going to score some points this week.
Okay. We're going to go on to the next game here. We got the Giants playing at the Eagles. Giants coming off of a win against the Bucs, and the Eagles coming off that embarrassing loss to the Saints. We got the Giants, who are in the top 10 for fewest fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends, which is kind of surprising because I thought their defense wasn't really doing all that well this year. But the stats say otherwise. So. Not that you're going to get away from playing Jeffrey if you have him or Zach Ertz if you have him. Obviously, if you have Ertz, he's locked into your lineup even after a really bad game like he had last week. He's the one I'm really hoping for, a bounce-back game. And then with this Eagles team, I feel like they're going to come out and they're going to try and establish the run against the Giants. I think they're going to come out and show that Josh Adams, this rookie that they have, he led the team in carries last week. He led the team in touches amongst running backs. He did score that touchdown, had about 75 total yards. In a blowout loss to the Saints, where they really couldn't get him involved as much as I'm sure they wanted to. So if you're one of those people that is really hurting at running back and you need a guy that is that looks pretty talented, I think you can get away with playing Josh Adams this week. And then on the other side of the ball, obviously you're playing Saquon Barkley after that massive game that he had. Although the Eagles are only giving up the fifth fewest fantasy points to running backs, they're giving up the fourth most receptions to running backs. So I think Saquon will definitely be involved in the pass game, just like he has all season. And then Odell's going to be Odell. He's going to do work like he always does. And like I was trying to say last game, I was getting ahead of myself, is that the Eagles lost another 2 defensive backs last week. Yeah. They had that rookie that was a safety who they tried to convert to a corner, and then they had to move him outside. And then another guy went down with an ankle injury. So their defensive backfield is absolutely decimated right now.
Was that Darby last weekend, or was that the week before?
He was the week before.
The week before.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's pretty much Malcolm Jenkins and then a bunch of dudes that you've never heard of. So, Jenkins...
Malcolm Jenkins didn't really like the Sean Payton running up the score last week. You
see
him flip him off.
Yeah. But, hey, you're getting paid millions of dollars to play defense, so go out there and play some defense.
It doesn't matter if you're a rookie. It doesn't matter. That's what you're getting paid to do.
If I remember correctly, the last score of the game was Alvin Kamara on like a 40-yard pass where he was one-on-one with Jenkins, and Kamara just flat out beat him right off the line and scored that touchdown. So, you know what, excuses. Jenkins, if you don't like it, go out and play some better defense. And then with the Eagles giving up the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers as it is, on top of all these injuries, I think Sterling Shepard should have a good game after his pretty bad game last week. And in a game where they scored a lot of points, Sterling Shepard only had 2 targets, which is kind of weird. So I expect him to get a little more work in this game.
He unfortunately had that phenomenal move that he put on that DB last game, but his knee touched down. So it got called back. So it wound up only being like an 8-yard gain or something like that. What do you feel about the Giants tight end?
I mean, he's obviously ridiculously talented, but I'm afraid he's just another one of these soft tight ends that, like, you know,
he can't block.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he can only run certain routes. He's never going to be physical at the line of scrimmage.
I mean, he had 2 receptions last game, I think, for 60-something yards, I think it might have been.
Yeah, and one of them was like a 40 or 50-yard play. So,
well, you know, I feel like he could be a phenomenal tight end, but he's more like a Jimmy Graham type where, I mean...
soft.
He's soft. And I don't think Pat Shurmur likes that very much because you see the plays, he's not out there. It's Rhett Ellison.
Yep.
That's out there because Rhett Ellison blocks but also can catch too. You know, but I mean, it's unfortunate because he's a hell of a talent. I mean, we saw it last year. He's a hell of a talent, but I mean, it's unfortunate because he could definitely be, you know, something to be reckoned with, man. But
I mean, you would think with the threat in the backfield that the Giants have and the threat that they have out wide, that he would be able to get more open and get more involved.
Because you're always doubling Odell.
Exactly.
And then you're always going to have a spy on Saquon.
Exactly.
You know, see if he's coming out of the backfield. That should open up the entire field for Evan Ingram.
But, I mean, you look at it, like, since they've come back from their bye, I think the Giants have really tried to focus on running the ball, and that's why you've seen Barkley, his carries go up over these past 2 games. And you know, with Odell being there, he's always going to get all the red zone targets. So so for a tight end that's going to have low volume, not going to have red zone targets, and that's not a guy that's going to, you know, run a route on you like Jason Witten used to and get open all the time. I don't know. I'm not.
I mean, it's hard to compare him to. It's hard to compare him to Jason Witten. I mean, he might be better in the booth announcing a game, but you know,
I'm staying away from Evan Ingram to answer your question. All right, so the next game here, we got Seahawks playing at the Panthers. Seahawks just beat the Packers, and the Panthers lost that game to the Lions because their head coach is a moron and decided to go for 2 instead of play for the tie and go to overtime.
Listen, I liked the play. I liked the aggressiveness of it. What I didn't like is that you're not using your quarterback to run into the end zone when you have one of the, if not the best running quarterbacks in the game.
Yep.
What are you doing? You're letting him pass it?
Yeah.
And, I mean, he made a horrible pass. It was a terrible throw. But that was a play call. That's a play call. It should have been a run with Cam Newton. It was What a horrendous play call. It made me so angry to see that.
So maybe not the call to go for it, but the play call that they chose.
I love the call to go for it, man. Be aggressive, win the game. You're not in this to tie it. You are not. This is not a business of tying. This is a business of winning. And Ron Rivera went for the win. He went for the win, but he went with a terrible play call. I mean,
I don't know. To me, it's just with them losing Kerryon Johnson towards the in the middle of that game. To me, you kick the extra point, you go to overtime, and you hope that your defense holds up against this that Lions offense that was clearly one-dimensional at that point. But that's what makes you and me, right?
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, I mean, you have a quarterback that weighs, 240? Like, run the ball. Give him the ball and let him run it. Let him be Superman. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the running backs involved in this game. You got Christian McCaffrey, obviously, is a start. You got Chris Carson, who is obviously a start because he's the number one back there. But between Mike Davis and Rashad Penny, who we've seen kind of emerge over these past
staying away from that backfield.
You don't like any of them?
I just because it's now turned into what the Packers used to be, where it's like you don't know if it's going to be Chris Carson, you don't know if it's going to be Mike Davis or Rashad Penny. And when you don't have, some of the game script might call for, all right, this series we're going to put in Rashad Penny and we're going to run plays that work around him, and then this time we're going to run Mike Davis. I hate that backfield. It reminds me of New England, the New England backfield, where it's like you have three different guys, you don't know who's going to be in, and they wind up just being so inconsistent for fantasy purposes.
See, I kind of disagree because last week on the first drive of the game, Chris Carson fumbled, and yet he still got 17 carries throughout the game. That 17 carries to Rashad Penny's 8 and to Mike Davis's 4. He didn't play in the week beforehand because I think they were trying to save him for this game, which was on Thursday night. I think all three of them are so similar. All three of them run hard. I don't think any one of them is a better pass catcher than any of the others. So I don't really see, any one of them having a different type of skill set where it dictates playing on, let's say, in the 2-minute drive, or on who should be the third down back compared to who should be the second down back. And they run so much. They run the ball more than anybody in the NFL. And to me, a team that's going to spend that much time running the ball, a guy that has clearly had more rushing attempts than the other two. I'm okay starting Chris Carson. Yeah. It's the trying to decide who to handcuff him is, to me, the question.
That's the other issue, and we know about that Marty Schottenheimer offense being Jets fans.
Yeah, we do. Let's run the ball. Coach, it's 3rd and 12. Let's run the ball.
We got a good offensive line. Yeah. Run it. In that game too, like I was saying before, Moore. now we're on the right game. So DJ Moore kind of had, again, he's another one that had his coming out party list. And this is a kid that is so highly regarded coming out of Maryland. People were talking about him left and right. He's going to be amazing. He had a very, very slow start to the year. But I think now Ron Rivera and who's the offensive coordinator there?
The dude from the Chargers.
Yeah.
I forget his name.
I know. I'm drawing a blank on these guys. But I think they're finally realizing, this is their number one wide receiver, man. This is
Norv Turner.
Norv Turner, that's it.
Norv Turner for 200, Alex.
So now they're finally realizing. So if you can, when you listen to this podcast, get out there on that waiver wire and go see if he's available, because I know I picked him up in the draft way, way late in the draft this year, and I wound up dropping him. And I went on today, and I was looking, and he's still available. And, if you're hurting at wide receiver, this is going to be a guy that is going to start getting more targets. Devin Funchess, forget it. Get rid of him. But DJ Moore is on the up and up right now. And obviously you're starting Christian McCaffrey. Obviously you're starting Cam Newton. You're starting Russell Wilson on the other side of the ball. Another guy I really like is Lockett. Lockett has seemed to come out as the number one wide receiver on that team now. Doug Baldwin, to me, I think he has maybe one touchdown on the year, and I think that was last week.
Yep.
He hasn't done anything, and I know he was hurt for a little while, but Doug Baldwin, man, I'm I don't know if I'm starting him. To be honest with you, he's just been too inconsistent this year for me. I'm staying away from Doug Baldwin, but Lockett would be a good wide receiver 2 flex option. If you need a flex option, he's a great flex option. If you have other wide receivers, I would start other wide receivers. But yeah, Baldwin for me, I'm staying away from Baldwin.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to DJ Moore real quick. With him, if he emerges as the number 1 wide receiver there, and with Devin Funchess as maybe that third down possession type receiver because he is that big body guy, and Curtis Samuel being kind of their gadget wide receiver, the take the top off the defense wide receiver. You look at their schedule for the rest of the season. I mean, Seattle this week's kind of tough, but then you get Tampa Bay, Cleveland, New Orleans, Atlanta, and New Orleans again. So that's probably the best schedule for a wide receiver in football. And I mean, if he's available, definitely go out and grab him. Seahawks are allowing the 7th fewest fantasy points to tight ends, but I think Greg Olson's one of those tight ends where it doesn't matter the matchup. You just got to play him and hope that he scores like he did last week. I mean, we pretty much hit on everything for this game. So why don't we move on to the last game here for the part 1 of the podcast and talk about the 49ers coming off a bye playing in Tampa Bay, who are coming off that loss to the Giants. Head coach down there in Tampa has already announced that Jameis Winston is going to be starting, so it's the merry-go-round just keeps going.
A joke,
yeah, it's
dude.
a joke down there for sure.
That organization right now is such a joke.
We saw Fitzpatrick, I think, at the end of his, or at least what we thought was going to be the end of his rope, and
I drove all the way up to Buffalo to see him at the end of his rope. Oh boy. Winning you're in, boys, and what do? They go and they just rip my soul out.
Oh, that sucks. That was the game you guys went in the full body paint, right?
No. We drove up to Buffalo. This was the only time we went in full body paint was
in Cleveland, right?
Well, we went to the Colts game this year, and we went to the Jacksonville game a couple years ago. And that was the year that they went 10-6 and lost up in Buffalo that year.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Fitz is like a cat. He has not 9 lives. He has like 30 lives, or he has 32 lives, one for each team. So it seems like he's played on every team. The one guy that has been pretty impressive from the Bucs that I think a lot of people were counting out was Peyton Barber last week. 18 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown. I think this 49ers run defense, it's not good, but it's not bad either. So I think you can get away with starting Peyton Barber if you have to in your RB2 spot. And then obviously Mike Evans you're playing because he's a beast. And then I think the other, you kind of roll a die here for between Jackson, Godwin, and Adam Humphries. Last week, Jackson had the most targets. Humphries had 5 targets, 60 yards, and he's the one who got the touchdown out of the 3 of them. So I think if you're looking for consistency amongst those wide receiver 2 for the Tampa Bay Bucs, I think it's got to be Humphries at this point. Chris Godwin had a good start to the season, but he's pretty much fallen off. So to me, that kind of sums up the Bucs. It's pretty much Mike Evans and a dart throw at wide receiver 2 for them. And then you look at the 49ers. This Buccaneers defense is in the top 7 in most fantasy points allowed to all 4 positions. So, I mean, you can pretty much start any 49er, any relevant 49er. So, if you really want to have some fun and play some fantasy football, go ahead and start Nick Mullins and just see what happens. Because I mean, the Bucs defense is bad enough where
you could, but you're starting George Kittle.
Oh, for sure, you're starting George Kittle.
That man is a beast, dude. What a baller he is, man.
Yeah, and I mean, you're starting Matt Breida as well because the Bucs just gave up 3 touchdowns to Barkley. I'm not saying that Breida's anywhere near as good as Barkley is, but I think you can definitely get away with Breida playing this week. And then Marquise Goodwin, he's a big play waiting to happen, and with this Bucs defense that is just so bad, giving up the 2nd most fantasy points to wide receivers, I think you can throw him into your lineup and feel like he's gonna catch at least 1 deep pass. Hopefully, it goes for a touchdown.
You hope so.
Yeah.
You hope so. I mean, he's been pretty quiet this year. Ever since Jimmy GQ went down. You know, he's been pretty quiet.
Unfortunately for them. But yes, okay, that does it for part 1 of the podcast. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and do all the AFC home games. So stick around and come back with us. We are back with part 2 of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast, Week 12 edition. And the first game that we are going to dive into here is the Patriots visiting the Jets, both teams coming off of a bye. I see this as an absolute bloodbath for our New York football Jets, who have been pretty putrid in every facet of the game over these past couple weeks.
I think that's being nice.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead and tell everybody about why you shouldn't start any Jets players in this game?
Well, first of all, their offensive line is horrendous, and I find it quite comical that if you go on Instagram and you follow like the New York Jets like Instagram pages and everything, they're on there and they're being like, "Oh, go vote Pro Bowl for like Brian Winters and James Carpenter." Like, you can't be serious. You want us to vote them to the Pro Bowl when they can't block for anything. It's terrible.
They can't even snap the ball.
And then okay, going with the offensive line, you know, when a defensive end or defensive lineman is coming in and they know that they can't get in, they're going to go and they're going to jump up. The job of that offensive lineman is to make sure he doesn't get his hands up. You know how many batted passes they had in the past 2 weeks? Dude, I'm telling you, it's got to be close to 10. I mean, like, it's unbelievable how bad they are. And then Jeremy Bates, please just leave. Please just hand in your stuff.
I have a feeling every
out.
Coach is going to be going after
every
this.
single coach. You know, they're not firing Todd Bowles because they don't have a good enough replacement. They're holding on to him to the end of the year because there is not a good enough replacement for him.
Right.
So you have Jeremy Bates pretty much calling the same garbage plays over and over again. It's like a screen over to Quincy Enunwa, and then you're running the ball right up the middle. You're running the ball up the middle with an offensive line that they can't open any holes for the running back. They played the one good game against the Broncos, which was, I mean, it was amazing that they did that. And then they came back to earth the next however many weeks. It's been atrocious. Then the defense, you're using Jamal Adams as if he is an outside linebacker, and you're blitzing him, I'm going to say close to 70% of the time. It doesn't make any sense. And then you know what they're doing? It's a quick check down to the slot receiver.
Or whoever the hot receiver
whoever
is.
the hot route receiver is, because they're calling. You hear him calling the audible every single time you see Jamal Adams. You know he's coming on a blitz.
He just doesn't get home.
Excuse me. It's never like he's coming in to like show blitz and then dropping back into coverage. I mean, that happens very, very rarely. But other than that, hey, Jenny Dupre.
Oh, Jenny Dupre's in the podcast studio here. You're gonna have to skedaddle out of here, Jenny. Sorry.
So
when Golden Doodles rush the set.
It's just terrible. And then another gripe of mine is Tremaine Johnson. You signed like the richest cornerback deal in the offseason, and you come in, if you're not hurt, you're playing like garbage. You're like, you need to go, bro. You need to go. You need to get off the team. I'm tired of this. I'm so tired of being a Jets fan. The coaching is horrendous. The play is horrendous. It's like these guys don't even care. It's like they don't even care. This is 32 years of my life of dealing with this nonsense. It's just like, oh my Lord, just literally clean house. Get rid of everybody. Bring in an offensive-minded coach. So in other words, what I'm trying to tell you is do not start any of the Jets. Okay. Any of them.
All right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'm not starting any Jets. On this Patriots team, you can start anyone, I feel like. Obviously, Brady, Sonny Michel, if he's healthy. James White has been a really good running back this year. Julian Edelman, now that he's back, definitely starting him. Josh Gordon, you're starting him. If Gronk plays, you're going to start him, obviously, because he's Gronk. And it's really the only thing the Jets do somewhat good is defend against tight ends. So, I mean, you might want to temper expectations for Gronk, but as you were saying, with Jamal Adams being so much of involved in the blitz game that he's not really involved in man coverage anymore. So I don't know if we expect him to man up with Gronk or if he's going to continue to, be used as a blitzer that never gets in. So
it's unbelievable. Disguise your blitzes better. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I think even if Gronk doesn't play, I think you can even get away with playing Chris Hogan this week because the Jets defense is just so bad.
But I take that. If you are hurting on a tight end, Chris Herndon would be a flyer. You could take a flyer on him this week. That's probably the only guy that I'm going to say. And this is like if you are desperate. Because, let's be fair. The tight end field is not – you're looking at like maybe 3 really good tight ends and the rest of the field. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, if you have Kelsey and you haven't really had a backup tight end because you don't really need one, I think this is the last week that you're going to have to put up with buys. So he could be one of the last – viable waiver wire replacement guys for a guy on bye, and to that point, the Patriots are giving up the second most fantasy points to tight ends, so the matchup is there. So, Kevin, maybe you're onto something there.
Yeah, could be.
We'll go on to the next one of these AFC East matchups. We got the Dolphins playing against the Colts. Dolphins are coming off of a bye. Colts coming off of that big win in their division game against the Titans last week. The Colts defense is actually playing really well. They're giving up the 8th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. And it came out today that Tannehill will be starting for the Dolphins. So I think hopefully we've seen the end of Brock Osweiler. I think the only viable player on this Dolphins team is Kenyon Drake in a PPR league. He's obviously way more involved in the pass game than in the run game because of Frank Gore being there. And you look at the Colts, they're allowing the most receptions and the 4th most receiving yards to running backs. So Kenyon Drake does have a good matchup. He's, I think, the best player on this offense, even though he may not get as many touches as he should. I think this week you can feel comfortable playing Kenyon Drake. The running back on the other side of the ball, Marlon Mack, he's got one of the best matchups of the week. The Dolphins giving up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs. So as we mentioned earlier, if you have Marlon Mack, you're starting him.
The way that offensive line is playing.
Yeah.
Man,
what is it, 23 straight quarters without allowing a sack? The Colts...
That's insane.
They spent this offseason...
they picked up that kid, Quentin Nelson from Notre Dame.
Yep.
Beast.
I think their first 4 draft picks were 2 running backs and 2 offensive linemen. So
and they struggled in the beginning of the year, but Frank Reich has... that guy's a quarterback whisperer. I should just say an offense whisperer. Look what he did over in Philly. Now look at Philly now that he's not there.
Right.
And then he comes over here, and this offense, it's amazing. Obviously the only wide receiver that you're going to start from the Colts is going to be T.Y. Hilton.
Right. Who should probably see a lot of Xavier Howard with the Dolphins. Pretty good shutdown corner, actually. But, that's one of those stud combos, quarterback receivers, Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton. So, you got to start T.Y. Hilton.
You have to. Who else are you going to start? You have Pascal and
Chester Rogers.
They'll contribute because, who else is on the Miami defense?
But,
right. Tight end-wise, too, we talked about Eric Ebron dropping a big fat egg. It's possible he has a bounce-back game. That was his worst game of the year, and I have a feeling he may come back this week and just go, as the kids say, ham.
Yeah.
Jack Doyle he's been a little, in my opinion, up and down this year. He
he was hurt. He missed a whole bunch of games.
So
it's one of these offenses. It's really hard to predict where the targets are going to go outside of T.Y. Hilton, and Andrew Luck just disperses the ball so well. I feel like every single eligible receiver on the Colts catches a pass every game because Andrew Luck he finds a way to get the ball, to get everyone involved.
And if anybody had any question about his arm strength after that bomb to T.Y. Hilton last week, I think everybody can put that to rest. Right?
Yeah, for sure. The next game is we got another AFC South versus AFC East. We got the Jaguars playing the Bills. Bills, again, they're coming off a bye. The entire AFC East was on bye last week. And the Jaguars coming off of that heartbreaking, ball-busting loss to the Steelers, where they were winning, 16-0 until the fourth quarter, and then just
and then their head coach screwed them because they don't trust Blake Bortles,
right?
Which you can't really blame him, but I mean, come on, you got to pass the ball. I mean, literally, I saw one of the highlights, and it was of Blake Bortles literally running off the field on like a third down, like he handed the ball off and ran off the field. It was ridiculous because he knew. He's just like, well, all right, this is over. That's
We're punting.
Great.
Yeah.
In this game, guys, we're going to make this quick. You're going to start Fournette, and that's literally about it. If you have Fournette, start him. Other than that, you cannot trust a single person on either one of these teams.
Yep.
Now, we know that the Bills just buried the Jets last week, but I mean, it was a fluke. It was a fluke game. They're going to go in against one of the best defenses in the league. You're going to have LaShawn McCoy. He's not going to do anything. They don't have any wide receivers. Just stay away from all the guys except for Fournette, and that's it. Let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, there's just one quick interesting stat. So apparently Sean McDermott, head coach of the Bills, said yesterday that Josh Allen is on track to start this week. And if you look at the Jags, they give up the fourth most rushing yards to quarterbacks. So Josh Allen is in the top 10 for most rushing yards by quarterbacks this year, even though he's only played a handful of games. So, I mean, that could be one thing to look for in this game is if Josh Allen plays, him running the ball, which, as we all know, is a huge thing for quarterbacks as far as added value.
Super talented when it comes to that, but...
All right, so let's move on. We got the Titans playing at the Texans. Titans coming off of that loss against the Colts, and Texans just beat the Redskins last week. Two pretty good defenses here. Honestly, we don't know as of right now who's going to be the quarterback for the Titans, whether it's going to be Mariota or Blaine Gabbert. It seems like Mariota's dealing with this nerve issue in his elbow again.
Still.
And when you look at Blaine Gabbert, who actually started the game the last time these two teams played, Gabbert gave you 9 fantasy points. He had 117 yards and a touchdown. I think the only really playable guy on this Titans offense is Jonnu Smith, the tight end. Another one of these tight ends that you can probably fill in if you got Kelsey on a bye this week, or if if you've been riding with Jimmy Graham and looks like he's going to miss with that thumb injury. This offense obviously likes the tight end position. Last week, we saw 14 targets go to the tight ends for the Titans. Excuse me. And I think Jonnu Smith's really the only one that you can get consistent production out of on this offense. We saw Dion Lewis, who we had on the pour one out section. Last week, only 12 touches. He had 32 yards. He's just hasn't been playing well over the past couple weeks, and I can't trust it, especially if Blaine Gabbert's going to be the quarterback.
Well, especially going up against that Houston front.
Yeah. You
can't trust him. You definitely can't trust Derrick Henry. Forget it.
Looking at the Texans here, Deshaun Watson, last time they played, he had 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, another 44 rushing yards on top of that. He had an interception, and he actually fumbled twice, but he didn't lose either of them. So, if he can, stay away from those turnovers, he can have another huge game here. I think, the Titans defense is really good, but Deshaun Watson is one of those special quarterbacks.
He's got to play smarter ball, though.
Yeah.
I mean, he's taking too many hits, man. He's not that big of a guy, dude.
But he's one of those quarterbacks where you're kind of counting on that added rushing to give you a little bit more value. So, you want to see him protect himself, but you also, as a Watson owner, you got to love watching him scrambling around, making plays with his legs. I'm looking at these two running backs for the Texans. Neither of them had a good game the last time these two teams played, and Lamar Miller has he's gotten the lion's share of the carries over the past 2 weeks, but I don't know. I'm just staying away from them this week. I think the Titans' run defense that gives up the second fewest fantasy points to running backs is really good, and I'm staying away from them this week.
You heard anything about Deonta Foreman?
So last week he was activated off the PUP, and then once that happens, you have 21 days to fully activate them.
Right.
And if you don't, then they have to go on IR for the rest of the year. So it's something to keep an eye on. And if after next week, if he's not officially on the 53-man roster, then he's going to have to go on IR. So, it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because if he comes back and he's healthy, he can definitely mess up this backfield a lot. It was an Achilles injury, so honestly, I don't expect much from a running back coming back from an Achilles injury anyway. I think next year should be what he aims for, but we'll see. We'll have to keep an eye on it.
Take the year.
Last thing here, obviously DeAndre Hopkins, you're starting him. He's a beast. Yeah, he kind of had a bad game for his standards. Only had 56 yards, but he did catch a touchdown. So, and then the other guy here, Kiki QT, had 9 targets last week, 77 yards. So I think they may be able to use him in that short pass game if the run game can't get going against the Titans down there.
Kiki, do you love me?
So, Kev, we got the Steelers playing the Broncos here. Both teams coming off of a win. Broncos got lucky against the Chargers last week. Did you see how that game ended? It was ridiculous.
What did happen?
So, the Chargers were up all game, and then in the fourth quarter, they were running like a 4-minute drive, and on a third down, Philip Rivers threw the ball out of bounds, and it stopped the clock, and it gave the Broncos a minute plus, and they had, I think they had one timeout left, and the Broncos just drove down the field, kicked the field goal, and won the game. It was ridiculous. But yeah, the player I think we both really like here is Antonio Brown and James Conner. Obviously, they're probably the two best players in this game.
Well, I would start James Conner with caution, because that defensive line of the Broncos has gotten better as the year has gone on.
Okay.
So I would start him with caution, but you're still going to start him. He's still a number one. I mean, let's be realistic here. You're starting Juju Smith-Schuster. You're starting Antonio Brown.
Yep.
And, okay, listen, let's squash this nonsense with Ben Roethlisberger home and away. Please.
At least this year.
Spare me. I've had him the entire year in 2 leagues, and he has won games for me. This man, he started off terrible last week.
It was bad.
And I mean, listen, I was sweating it.
3
it hard.
interceptions.
And then he comes back, he throws 2 touchdowns and winds up with how many passing yards was it? It was like
314.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. This home away nonsense. He's
against
gonna go,
the Jags too.
Exactly. And when you have Jalen Ramsey intercepting you twice. I mean, come on. Put it to rest. This home away nonsense. Yeah, slow start, came back, still wound up with, I think it was like 27 fantasy points in a PPR format. I mean, he's a beast. And on the Broncos side of the ball, as we talked about Philip Lindsay, but this is going to be a week where I'm going to say you're going to want to start him with caution. If you have somebody else that's going against a defense that isn't, this run defense is just, the defense in general of this Steelers team, everybody in the beginning of the season sitting here saying, oh, this Steelers defense is on a decline. They don't have anybody. Please, man. TJ Watt, you got Cameron Hayward in the middle blocking stuff up. This offense is definitely coming to their own.
Their run defense is really good. They give up the 6th fewest fantasy points to running backs, but yeah, their pass defense still needs a little bit more work. They're giving up the 8th most points to quarterbacks, but yeah.
With that stat aside, you're going to have Cortland Sutton. You're going to want to start him, but you're going to have Joe Hayden on him. Joe Hayden's going to be on Cortland Sutton the entire. Actually, I shouldn't say that.
Probably be on Emmanuel Sanders.
He'll probably be on Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah.
Actually, so Cortland Sutton's going to be actually a really good start. So you're gonna want to watch starting Emmanuel Sanders, but. Obviously, we don't know the game plan. We don't know if that's really going to be the case, if he's going to be just shadowing Emmanuel Sanders the whole time, or if he's going to be he's just going to be saying on one side of the field, he's going to be covering both Cortland Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders. But just be careful with both those guys. Emmanuel Sanders especially, because I think you're right. I think they are going to have Joe Hayden, shadowing him the entire game. So other than that, you have Royce Freeman, if you must start, but all that hype in the beginning of the year, and then Philip Lindsay, hometown kid comes in, and he just steals that starting job.
Yeah, Royce Freeman did get the red zone work last week, and he got, I think it was 2 or 3 goal line carries. He had the 1 touchdown, where they were in the red zone. So I think that's something you're going to look for. as the season goes on, is Royce Freeman's more of that like short yardage goal line back, and then Philip Lindsay's going to be used for everything else. And then obviously they're going to have the other running, I can't even remember his name.
Devonta Booker.
Yeah, he'll be sprinkled in there, just annoying everybody.
And that's pretty much just to throw the defense off. He's not going to play. Come on.
The last thing here is Jeff Hireman, tight end for the Broncos. He's got a good matchup. Steelers giving up the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends. So again, another one of these options for one of you Jason Kelce or Travis Kelce owners out there that might need a replacement at tight end this week.
Oh, don't forget about Vance McDonald. You know,
Vance McDonald too. Yeah,
he likes to throw people out of the club.
Yeah. We got another game here: Raiders at Ravens. This is a pretty easy one. The Ravens are really good on defense. They're giving up the fewest fantasy points to running backs, so I'm staying away from all 3 of the running backs for the Raiders. Even Jalen Richard, who I know a lot of people have been starting in PPR leagues, but the Ravens also give up the fewest receiving yards to running backs, so even Richard I'm staying away from. It seems like Brandon LaFell, who has kind of become their number 1 receiver there, especially with Jordy Nelson and Martavis Bryant going
out,
in and out.
He got hurt.
Yeah, it looks like he tore his Achilles, so Brandon LaFell looks like he's going to be out for the year. And these other 2 dudes, Seth Roberts, Marcel Atman, I'm
who?
Yeah, exactly. And then Derek Carr has just been so inconsistent, looks so bad. Just that the offense that John Gruden brought there just does not look like it fits him at all.
The only guy you're gonna start is gonna be Jared Cook.
Right, exactly.
That's it. That's absolutely it on that side of the ball.
Yeah. And then with the Ravens, I mean, so we saw Lamar Jackson come in and he carried the ball 24 times for 117 yards, which is ridiculous for a quarterback. I don't know how they're going to be able to keep that up. Like how a dude's going to be able to take that many hits. It's not Cam Newton,
and he's not built. Yeah, he's not built like Cam Newton.
Exactly.
He's not going to be able to sustain that.
And as we said earlier, this dude Gus Edwards came in, absolutely stole the job, had 115 yards and a touchdown. I think he's obviously the number 1 back there. I really hope that they just kind of stick with him and use the other 3 guys sparingly and not try and run this running back by committee with all 4 running backs. It's gonna be really ugly if they do.
They were saying, I don't know if it was John Harbaugh or if it was one of the podcasts I was listening to, but they said that these guys have practiced together since they came in, and so they just have been gelling together. You have Gus Edwards and you have Lamar Jackson.
Right, 2 rookies,
yeah. I mean, they look like they've been playing together for a while because they really have been. They've been playing in practice. They've been playing on the practice squad. I mean, like these guys, they're gonna wind up being something. Maybe not this year, but for the rest of the season, Gus Edwards, he's on my radar. Lamar Jackson, not a starting quarterback, and like we were saying before, he's not built for that kind of to run around like he did in college. This ain't college, man.
Right.
I mean, you're playing with the 1%ers. This is not college.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up Lamar Jackson in a couple of my leagues just as kind of a lottery ticket if he came in and turned into the next Deshaun Watson or whatever. If he just came on and exploded, and the rushing totals were there for sure, but the passing totals were not. I know he's got a pretty good schedule for the rest of the season too, but yeah, that's a really good point. The 2 rookies, was this the week that they wanted to get Gus Edwards involved just because they knew they were starting Lamar Jackson, or was it something that they saw in practice that made them feel like it was finally time to downgrade Alex Collins? I don't know, but when you look at the receivers for the Ravens, you can't start any of them with any confidence either. I mean, Lamar Jackson only completed 13 passes, so and if there's anything to look at in the pass game, Boyle, their tight end for the Ravens, he had 4 targets and caught all 4 of them for 36 yards. So, as they like to say, a young quarterback's best friend is a good tight end. So, another one of these possible replacements for Travis Kelce. If you're really diving deep, I think maybe Jack Boyle. I don't even know his first name is Boyle, whatever it is.
I have no idea.
He could be something for you, maybe. We're going to move on here to the AFC North. Browns, another team coming off of a bye, playing the Bengals after that loss to the Ravens, where they gave up 100+ rushing yards to Lamar Jackson. The Bengals defense is absolutely putrid. They're in the top 7 for most fantasy points allowed to every single position, And the Browns aren't any better either. They're in the top 6 for fantasy points allowed to both running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. So in this game, who you starting, who you sitting?
All right, so we'll start on the Bengals side of the ball. So obviously you're starting A.J. Green. Now, with that being said, he more than likely is going to be shadowed by Denzel Ward.
If he plays.
If he plays. I think it's likely he does. Now, if he doesn't play, then you're going to have Tyler Boyd, who's going to be covered by Denzel Ward. Now, this is going to be something that you might have to set your lineup probably Saturday or maybe even Sunday morning. You're going to have to watch when this comes out whether A.J. Green is playing or not, because if A.J. Green isn't playing, Tyler Boyd's going to be a terrible start, and you're going to want to go out, and you're going to want to, and as a matter of fact, you're probably going to want to look for John Ross. I mean, that's the only other option that they have up there. Obviously, you have Joe Mixon. You're going to be starting Joe Mixon. But, I mean, wide receiver-wise, Tyler Boyd will be a great start if A.J. Green's playing. And then if A.J. Green isn't playing, then, in my opinion, John Ross is going to be a good start.
Or at least a better start than Boyd. A better
start than Tyler Boyd, because Tyler Boyd's going to be going up against Denzel Ward. And I don't know if anybody's seen him play this year, but that kid can ball, man.
Yeah.
That kid's
showing
on
why
fire.
he was drafted 4th overall by the Browns.
Yeah, everybody talking about, they should have gotten Chubb. I haven't heard Chubb's name at all this year.
Well, he's been playing okay.
He's been playing all right.
He just happens to be on an absolutely horrible team in the Broncos.
Now, the other side of the ball. Matt and I were discussing this earlier. Landry. Jarvis Landry. I don't know what to say, man. You were just so great down in Miami. You come up here. What was the stat we were looking at here, man? It was the first 8 games. He had double-digit targets in 7 out of the 8 games. In the last 2 games, he has a total of 12 targets. He's just not getting the volume. He's not getting the volume. Baker Mayfield just seems to have more going with the younger receivers in the tight end, with Njoku, which Njoku is very inconsistent, though. He's another one, like we've been talking about. You more than likely have had him on your bench. I mean, you more than likely have gone out. You went out and you drafted him. He had maybe like 1 or 2 good weeks, and then he's really been very, very inconsistent throughout the entire year. But if you have Travis Kelce, go check the waiver wire, see if he's available, and go snag him up, because he might very well be a good start this year. I mean, with the way the Bengals are playing, you can go and grab him. Another guy would be Callaway. Callaway, him and Baker Mayfield, they seem to be on the same page for the most part. But again, he's another one where it's like he has a good game, then he has a terrible game, and it seems like he has more terrible games in a row than he has good games. Now, the one guy that has just come into his own, Mr. Nick Chubb. You, my man, are a beast. I had him the 1 week, and what did he have? He had that 92-yard run for a touchdown. He got me 45 points in a PPR format. 45 points, bro. I mean, you're starting this kid. You're starting him. Once the second they got rid of Carlos Hyde, I got a call from Chris, and he goes, dude, he's like, you got to go get Nick Chubb. And boy, was he right, man. Picked up Nick Chubb, and he has not disappointed. So if you have Nick Chubb, you're starting him. If you don't have Nick Chubb, you need to see if he's available, because that kid...
He's definitely not available at this point.
Yeah, at this point, after seeing that 92-yard run 2 weeks ago, he's definitely not available. But you're starting that guy. And, I mean, he's either a running back 1, running back 2, or a flex. I mean, like, in one of my leagues, I have Saquon, Melvin Gordon, and I have Nick Chubb. So I think I'm doing all right there, right?
Yeah, it's a nice set of backs. Yeah, I think Jarvis Landry's decline is in direct response to Nick Chubb's ascent, if that's the right word. I think them really focusing on Nick Chubb has kind of hurt Landry's numbers, and I don't see that changing. I think they're going to keep riding this young running back, letting their young quarterback develop, and I think there's nothing that hurts a young quarterback's development than him being forced to funnel targets to one wide receiver. Hopefully, Jarvis Landry, is the team player that he said he was in Hard Knocks.
Yeah,
and hopefully we don't see him start freaking out because he's not getting the targets that he wants. But yeah, I mean, Njoku's interesting here because last week against Atlanta, who's an awesome matchup for tight ends, he only had 1 target. He caught it for 18 yards, but that was it. It was really weird seeing him not involved in a game where they were actually putting up points against Atlanta. But, yeah, he's got a great matchup here. Like I said, Bengals give up the 6th most fantasy points to tight ends. So Njoku definitely has a good matchup. Hopefully he can kind of bounce back and get a little more involved. So let's move to the last game here for the preview. We got the Arizona Cardinals playing the Los Angeles Chargers in LA. Both teams coming off of losses here. For the Cardinals, it's David Johnson all day, every day. Last week had 137 rushing yards. Had 26 total touches. And you look at the Chargers defense, they're giving up the 2nd most receptions and the 3rd most receiving yards to running backs. So I think David Johnson's going to beat him up in the run game. I think he's going to beat him up in the pass game. And besides him, honestly, I don't know if you can trust Fitzgerald. I don't know if you can trust Christian Kirk. You definitely can't trust either of these tight ends for the Cardinals. And Josh Rosen has just been way too inconsistent. The team's just not very good. And I don't know. I feel like out of the crop of rookie running backs or rookie quarterbacks, I think in a couple of years, I feel like Josh Rosen's going to be the one that fades away first.
After all that talk, right? I mean, listen, he looks pretty good. I mean, he looks all right. And then they had who's the new offensive coordinator there?
Byron Leftwich.
Okay, all right. So Byron Leftwich, he knows how to utilize his star players on that offense. Now, that doesn't mean that they're a good team. I mean, we all know, we have watched this. They are a terrible team. But, I mean, now look at David Johnson. Now, ever since they got rid of Mike, what's-his-face?
Mike McCoy, was it there?
No, not was it? Maybe you're right. Maybe it was Mike McCoy. I don't remember. Look it up real quick. But ever since they got rid of him and they finally started utilizing David Johnson the way Bruce Arians did, I mean, look at what they're doing. And then Larry Fitzgerald is actually getting targets. Josh Rosen, he has his bright moments, but he also has his very, very rookie moments, which is going to happen. He is a rookie. But, I mean, you're going to come in talking all that crap, saying like, oh, yeah, there were 9 mistakes before me. Bro, you better come out and you better ball hard if you're going to sit there and start talking all that garbage, dude. Yeah. And I mean, so far, and I know he's on a bad team, but good quarterbacks make bad teams and bad teammates look good.
Right. I mean, he did have 3 touchdowns last week, but he only completed 9 passes against the Raiders.
Yeah.
So
what's that saying?
He just looks really plain and boring to me.
It's just that offense was not ran properly. It just wasn't.
And then on the Charger side of the ball, Phillip Rivers had 400 passing yards last week. It took him 43 pass attempts to do it, but he's been playing really well down the stretch here in the fantasy season. So I had no problem starting him. Melvin Gordon's obviously a beast. We saw that angry run that he put out there, looked like a monster. And you're definitely starting Keenan Allen, obviously, but this Cardinals pass defense is really not all that bad. And for that reason, I'm not starting Mike Williams. I'm not starting.
Stay away from the Williams brothers.
Yeah, both of them. They're just too inconsistent. It's either their definition of touchdown or bust. And we saw Antonio Gates have a really good game last week for the first time this season, but I don't think it's going to be 2 weeks in a row because, again, the Cardinals actually are pretty good against tight ends, too. They give up the 6th fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So I'm actually staying away from Antonio Gates. And one more thing about this Chargers defense, actually. So their run D just keeps taking more hits. 2 weeks ago, it was Denzel Perriman going down for the year. Last week, it was Corey Legit, however you say it. I don't know if he's out for the year or if he's just, if it's just going to be a couple weeks, but it looked bad for him, too.
I think it's Corey Leggett, but I'm not sure.
And then you got Joey Bosa, who's only been playing on passing downs.
Well, that was his first game back.
Yeah.
I mean,
if that's the way they're going to keep it, if he's going to only play on passing downs, then
he's got to get into football shape before he starts playing every down.
Right.
He's an every down kind of guy, but you can't expect him to come in first game of the season and play every single down.
I think they need him to this week if they want to have any shot of shutting down David Johnson.
He needs to be put in slowly but surely. I mean, they're still playing some good football, and I know they're kind of depleted on defense, but I don't. If they rush him back, there's going to be a mistake.
Yeah. All right, so that does it for the Week 12 preview of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. Kev, thanks again for coming on. I hope you enjoyed it.
Matt, thanks for having me. I had a blast, man. Guys, everybody, thanks for listening. I hopefully can do it again soon.
And we hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. Like I said, it's the best holiday of the year. I hope everybody else enjoys it as much as I do. So drink nice cold beers, enjoy your turkeys, and of course enjoy the football. So we'll catch you guys next week for the Week 13 preview. And as always, may the fantasy gods be cruel to your opponents.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Fantasy Football Podcast. To listen to our episodes or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app, available on Android and iDevices, or visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find all of our episodes on breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors, podcasts, and other content, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com or download the free HC Universal Network app. Thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time, drink responsibly.